You didn't notice it when it happened. No argument, no confrontation, no obvious disrespect. Just small moments this week. You replied immediately when someone messaged you. You adjusted your schedule to fit someone else's urgency. You stayed polite when you wanted to push back. You made yourself available again, and nothing bad happened. That's the trap. Because power doesn't disappear through conflict. It disappears through access. You felt it later, in the way your opinion landed softer than before, in how your presence felt optional, not essential, in how people assumed you'd be there without asking. Most men never connect these moments. They think power is lost through failure, weakness, or being dominated. No, power is lost the moment you become too reachable. And if nothing changes, here is what happens next. People will contact you when it suits them. They will expect your time without earning it. They will involve you late or not at all. You won't be attacked. You won't be insulted. You'll be scheduled around, ignored when unnecessary, replaced when convenient, forgotten when silent. This is how men lose power quietly, while believing they're being responsible. You were trained for this. Society taught you that availability is professionalism. Conditioning taught you that politeness equals maturity. Emotional programming taught you that saying no needs justification. That training did not make you respected. It made you convenient. Now listen carefully. If you stay with this, you are not like most men. Most men will feel exposed and look for excuses. Weak men will call this arrogance and stop listening. But men who understand power already feel the pressure building, because accessibility is not kindness. It is leverage handed away. Only now does Machiavelli enter the conversation. He wrote, "He who is the cause of another becoming powerful ruins himself." When you give people unlimited access to your time, energy, and presence, you empower them and reduce yourself. Rule 1. Unlimited access signals low value. Look at a real moment from this week. Someone asked for your time, casually. You adjusted immediately. No pause, no resistance. You told yourself you were being efficient, but the psychology underneath was different. You taught them your time is flexible, your presence is guaranteed, your boundaries are negotiable. Human beings don't reward that. They discount it. Machiavelli understood this instinctively when he observed, "Familiarity breeds contempt." Contempt here does not mean hatred. It means devaluation. If you ignore this rule, here is the outcome. Your messages are answered last. Your requests carry less weight. Your absence goes unnoticed. You are included, but not prioritized. But when you reverse this pattern, something shifts. You stop adjusting immediately. You delay. You become selective, not aggressive, not rude, just unavailable by default. And people adapt. They wait. They plan. They hesitate before assuming, not because you demanded respect, but because your access is no longer automatic. Fear if ignored. You become the man people use until nothing is left. Power if mastered. Your presence becomes something people must earn. Rule 2. The fastest responder is never the most powerful. Think carefully. Who controls a situation? The one who reacts instantly, or the one who chooses when to respond? Speed feels productive, but psychologically, speed reveals dependence. Immediate response says, "I am available. I am waiting. I am ready when you are." Machiavelli warned about appearances long before modern psychology did. Men judge more by appearances than by reality. Immediate availability appears as surplus, and surplus is never respected. If you ignore this rule, here is your future. People interrupt you freely. They expect instant replies. They introduce urgency to control you. You will feel busy, but diminished. But when you slow your responses deliberately, something changes. People reread their messages. They become more precise. They stop wasting your attention. Fear if ignored. You live in reaction mode, constantly adjusting to others. Power, if mastered. You set the rhythm and others move within it. Rule 3. Constant presence makes you invisible. Most men believe showing up everywhere builds influence. It doesn't. It creates background noise. If you are always present, your presence loses weight. Machiavelli understood this dynamic when he wrote, "The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances. If you are always available, you appear replaceable. If you ignore this rule, this is what happens. People don't feel your absence. They don't miss your input. They don't adjust when you leave. You are seen, but not felt. But when you remove yourself selectively, something happens. Your absence creates a gap. That gap creates attention. That attention restores value. Fear, if ignored. You become part of the environment, unnoticed and expendable. Power, if mastered. Your presence changes the room because it is not guaranteed. Rule 4. Access is the real currency of power. Here is the deeper truth. Power is not dominance. Power is not aggression. Power is not control. Power is who has access to whom. When people have easy access to you, they feel comfortable managing you. When access becomes limited, they become cautious. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. Make yourself necessary to others. Necessary does not mean present. It means structurally important. If you ignore this rule, your role shrinks over time. If you master it, your position stabilizes without effort. Fear if ignored. You are useful until someone cheaper, faster, or quieter replaces you. Power if mastered. You are treated carefully because access is no longer free. Now pause. Nothing here required confrontation. Nothing required dominance displays. Nothing required aggression. All you did was remove automatic availability. And that alone began changing the dynamic. Most men will never do this. They will rush back to being reachable. They will explain delays. They will apologize for absence. Because accessibility feels safe. Dangerous men understand something else. Accessibility is exposure. Once you reduce access, people don't react the way you expect. They don't confront you. They don't ask what changed. They don't accuse you of being distant. They do something far more revealing. They test, quietly, instinctively, without admitting it, even to themselves. A message sent late at night to see if you'll reply. A request framed as just a quick thing. A boundary crossed lightly, almost playfully. These are not accidents. They are psychological probes. When access disappears, the human nervous system looks for confirmation. Is this real? Or is this temporary restraint? This is where most men fail. Because the test creates tension, and tension awakens the old reflex. The reflex to respond, to explain, to reassure. And the moment you do that, access is restored. Power leaks again. Rule 5. People test access before they respect position. Think about a moment from this week. Someone asked for your time without warning, not rudely, casually. They weren't disrespecting you. They were checking something, whether they still had automatic access. Machiavelli understood this instinctive behavior when he wrote, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs." The immediate need here is certainty. People want to know, can I still reach him? Can I still move him? Can I still count on him adjusting? If you ignore this rule, this is what happens. You respond quickly. You accommodate again. You signal availability, and the test is passed against you. But when you do something different, the dynamic shifts. You pause. You don't rush. You don't justify your timing. The request hangs in the air, and suddenly the other person becomes aware that access is no longer guaranteed. Fear if ignored. People continue assuming ownership over your time. Power if mastered. People approach you with preparation and restraint. Rule 6. Timing is a hierarchy signal, not a logistics issues. Most men think timing is about efficiency. It's not. Timing is about position. The man who moves instantly is reacting to someone else's rhythm. The man who chooses when to move sets the rhythm. Machiavelli understood this long before clocks and notifications existed. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. This is not about acting fast. It is about acting on your terms. If you ignore this rule, urgency becomes a weapon against you. People label things urgent. They manufacture pressure. They force decisions through speed. You feel productive but controlled. But when you reclaim timing, something subtle happens. You don't explain delays. You don't apologize for pauses. You let time exist, and people adapt. They stop using urgency casually. They become more precise. They wait. Fear if ignored. You live inside other people's timelines. Power if mastered. Others begin moving inside yours. Rule 7. Provocation is used when timing fails. When people can't control your timing, they try something else. Emotion. A joke that pushes a boundary. A comment meant to irritate. A tone that invites reaction. This is not disrespect. It is access-seeking behavior. They are testing whether they can still reach your emotional center. Machiavelli warned about emotional exposure when he wrote, "A man who wishes to command must never reveal his weakness." Weakness here is not anger. It is reactivity. If you ignore this rule, here is what happens. Your face changes. Your tone tightens. Your energy shifts. You don't explode. You signal. And once the signal is seen, people know exactly where the handle is. But when you hold still, something uncomfortable happens for them. The provocation receives nothing. No reaction. No correction. No emotional feedback. And suddenly, the person who initiated it feels exposed. They overcorrect. They soften. They retreat. Fear if ignored. People learn how to push your buttons quietly. Power if mastered. Provocation collapses back onto the sender. Rule 8. Silence after a test forces adjustment. Silence is not passive. Silence is pressure without movement. When someone tests you and you do not react, the psychological burden shifts. They wonder, did that land? Did I miscalculate? Did I overstep? Machiavelli understood the imbalance created by uncertainty. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Silence prevents experience. It leaves only appearance. And appearance, when unreadable, is interpreted as strength. If you ignore this rule, you will neutralize silence by explaining it. You'll say, "I was busy. I didn't mean anything by it. I wasn't bothered." And the moment you do, silence loses its power. But when silence stands, people adjust themselves. They become careful. They reduce pressure. They stop testing. Fear, if ignored. You train people to keep pushing until you respond. Power, if mastered. People regulate themselves before approaching you. Rule 9. When access disappears, behavior changes, not attitude. This is important. People don't suddenly respect you emotionally. They don't admire you. They adapt. They speak more carefully. They prepare more before asking. They stop assuming compliance. Not consciously, instinctively. Machiavelli captured this truth perfectly. Men more quickly forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. Psychologically, people forget kindness. They do not forget loss of leverage. Once leverage is gone, behavior updates permanently. If you ignore this rule, you'll try to restore warmth. If you master it, warmth becomes unnecessary. Fear, if ignored, you chase emotional comfort and lose position. Power, if mastered, you gain quiet authority without effort. Rule 10. Most men sabotage the shift to feel normal again. Here is the final trap of this stage: comfort. As access disappears, interactions feel colder, shorter, more contained. Most men misinterpret this as rejection. They panic. They reconnect emotionally. They over-explain. They restore availability. And they undo everything. Machiavelli warned about reliance on emotional response. A prince who relies on the people is ruined when they turn against him. Psychologically, a man who relies on reactions is ruined when reactions disappear. Power requires tolerance of emotional neutrality, not warmth, not hostility. Neutrality, fear if ignored. You oscillate between strength and weakness forever. Power, if mastered, your position stabilizes, even in silence. Pause here. Nothing you've done required confrontation. Nothing required aggression. Nothing required asserting dominance. You simply removed automatic access, and people began adjusting. This is only the second layer. By now, something subtle has already changed, even if no one has said it out loud. People are no longer interacting with you the same way. They hesitate before asking. They think before speaking. They adjust tone without realizing why. This is not imagination. This is the psychological recalibration phase. Once access is removed, the human mind does something unavoidable. It rewrites the internal model of who you are, and internal models are far more powerful than opinions. Rule 11. When access disappears, people rewrite you internally. Human beings do not update status through logic. They update it through patterns. Before your pattern was clear, you responded quickly. You accommodated. You explained. You softened. After access is reduced, that pattern breaks. And when a pattern breaks, the nervous system becomes alert. People start paying attention, not consciously, but instinctively. Machiavelli understood this instinctive recalibration when he wrote, "Men judge more by appearances than by reality." Your appearance has changed, not visually, psychologically. You now appear less reachable, less affected, less dependent on outcome, and that appearance forces reclassification. You move from easy to approach, to must be approached carefully. If you ignore this rule, you will try to correct misinterpretation. You'll clarify. You'll explain distance. You'll soften the shift, and the old model returns. Fear if ignored. You remain fixed in a low-value identity others assigned long ago. Power, if mastered. People update their internal image of you and keep it. Rule 12. Deference does not arrive with announcement. It arrives with caution. Most men expect resistance when they change. They expect confrontation. They expect pushback. They expect someone to say, "You've changed." That almost never happens. Instead, people self-regulate. They lower volume. They reduce jokes. They stop pushing small boundaries. This is not submission. It is caution. Machiavelli understood this invisible obedience when he wrote, "The wise ruler keeps his subjects in a state of dependence." Psychologically translated, the man who is not dependent creates dependence. Once people no longer feel emotional access to you, they must orient themselves around uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds respect faster than explanation ever could. Fear, if ignored, you mistake silence for rejection and rush back into availability. Power, if mastered, others adjust themselves without being told to. Rule 13. Unreadability is perceived as strength Even if you do nothing, most men think strength must be demonstrated. It doesn't. Strength is inferred when information is limited, when people cannot read. What pleases you? What irritates you? What affects you? What unsettles you? They default to the safest interpretation: power. Machiavelli hinted at this when he wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." You are no longer experienced. You are interpreted, and interpretation almost always favors authority. If you ignore this rule, you will try to be understood. You will clarify tone. You will explain silence. You will remove ambiguity, and ambiguity is where power lives. Fear if ignored. You become transparent and therefore manageable. Power if mastered. Others project strength onto you without confirmation. Rule 14. Once people adapt, they rarely return to the old version of you. This is critical. Human beings resist change, but once they adapt, they resist changing back. Once someone updates their internal model of you as less reactive, less accessible, less emotionally available, they stop interacting casually. Even when you say nothing, even when you are absent, even when no situation exists, your presence lingers. Machiavelli understood this permanence when he wrote, "Injuries should be inflicted all at once, benefits little by little." Psychologically, removing access is the injury. Once done, it does not invite retaliation, it invites adjustment. Fear, if ignored, you stay trapped in the role people originally assigned you. Power, if mastered, your new position becomes the default without maintenance. Rule 15. Power begins protecting you without effort. This is where most men are shocked. You stop defending boundaries, and people stop crossing them. You stop correcting disrespect, and it stops appearing. You stop asserting authority, and it is assumed, not because people suddenly respect you emotionally, but because testing you feels risky. Machiavelli captured this protective aspect of power perfectly. The prince who relies on his own power stands firm. Psychologically, the man who does not rely on reaction-fied you are slaughtered, does not need reinforcement. Your power no longer depends on skillful responses. Situations resolve themselves around you. Fear if ignored. You exhaust yourself constantly managing perception. Power if mastered. Your environment begins managing itself. Rule 16. Most men fail here because they misread the quiet. At this stage, something feels missing. Less emotional feedback, less warmth, less engagement. Most men interpret this as loss. They panic. They reinsert humor. They over-explain. They restore emotional availability. And the structure collapses. Machiavelli warned against dependence on emotional approval when he wrote, "Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous. People do not reward consistency. They reward position. Once position softens, treatment adjusts again. Fear if ignored. You oscillate between power and weakness indefinitely. Power, if mastered, you tolerate neutrality and gain stability." Rule 17. The difference between isolation and solidity. Here is the distinction most men never learn. Isolation feels empty. Solidity feels quiet. Earlier, silence felt tense. Now, silence feels neutral. You are no longer scanning for reactions. You are no longer sinking emotionally. You are no longer adjusting internally. You are simply present. That presence has weight. People feel it, even if they can't explain it. Fear, if ignored. You mistake quiet strength for loneliness and abandon it. Power, if mastered. You become grounded, unmovable. Pause here. You did not dominate anyone. You did not confront anyone. You did not demand respect. You simply removed automatic access, and people rewrote you internally. This is the third layer. At this point, nothing needs to be added. Only something needs to be stopped. Because the moment you stop being accessible, power doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It settles quietly. Most men never experience this stage because they are waiting for a feeling, a rush, a confirmation, some internal signal that says, "Now you have power." That signal never comes. What comes instead is stillness, and stillness is how dominance feels when it no longer depends on reaction. Earlier, you were moving constantly, checking responses, adjusting tone, stabilizing situations before they became uncomfortable. You were busy, but you were not grounded. Now, something has changed. You are no longer monitoring how others respond to decide how you should feel. You are no longer filling silence to prevent misunderstanding. You are no longer correcting perception in real time. And because of that, the environment around you has begun to reorganize itself, not emotionally, structurally. Machiavelli understood this state better than most modern thinkers ever will. He wrote that the ruler who stands firm is not the one who reacts best, but the one who does not need to react at all. Psychologically, this means something very specific. The man who does not need reactions cannot be manipulated by reactions. The man who does not need approval cannot be controlled by approval. The man who does not need reassurance cannot be destabilized by silence. This is the final shift. Earlier, power felt like control. Control of conversations, control of outcomes, control of how you were perceived. That kind of power is exhausting. It requires constant attention, constant adjustment, constant effort. This power is different. It comes from non-dependence. You are no longer trying to manage how things land. You let them land where they land. And because you are no longer reaching outward emotionally, others stop reaching inward. They feel resistance. Not resistance like hostility, resistance like gravity. They slow down around you. They choose words more carefully. They hesitate before pushing, not because you warned them, because their nervous system has already learned something important. There is nothing to gain by testing you. This is where power becomes anticlimactic. Nothing dramatic happens. No confrontation, no moment of victory. Just a quiet realization that things are different now. People don't interrupt you the same way. They don't assume availability. They don't expect instant access to your time, energy, or emotional state. They approach with intent. That is respect in its most honest form, not admiration, not fear, care. Machiavelli wrote that men forget kindness quickly, but they never forget the loss of leverage. You didn't take anything from anyone. You simply stopped giving something away, and that loss reshaped behavior permanently. This is what permanence looks like. You are no longer fluctuating between confidence and doubt. You are no longer rising with praise and collapsing with silence. You are no longer scanning rooms to see how you are being received. Your internal state stays level, and because your internal state stays level, no one can move it easily. Pressure loses its effect. Provocation loses its reward. Urgency loses its grip. You don't fight these things. You outlast them. This is also the stage where many men sabotage themselves, not because they don't understand the shift, but because it feels quiet. The emotional feedback they were used to is gone. The constant mirroring disappears. Interactions feel shorter, colder, more contained. Weak men mistake this for loss. They think something is wrong. They soften again. They explain again. They restore availability to feel connected, and the structure collapses. Dangerous men understand something else. This quiet is not emptiness. It is stability. Earlier, silence felt tense because you were waiting for reaction. Now, Silence feels neutral because nothing inside you needs to be confirmed. You are no longer emotionally synchronized with other people's behavior. You are synchronized with yourself. That is why this state is hard to explain, and why it must never be explained. The moment you try to describe this shift, you weaken it. The moment you justify your distance, you reopen access. The moment you narrate your mindset, you make it negotiable. Power does not explain itself. It simply exists. Machiavelli warned that the wise man does not interfere where interference weakens position. At this stage, explanation is interference. So is reassurance. So is over-communication. So is emotional transparency offered without necessity. You don't announce boundaries. You live inside them, and others feel them. This is also why pressure no longer scares you. When pressure comes now, it passes through you, not because you are numb, not because you are cold, but because nothing inside you is dependent on how the pressure resolves. People sense this immediately. They stop escalating. They stop provoking. They stop manufacturing urgency. Because pressure without reaction collapses on itself. There is no reward, and human beings abandon strategies that produce no reward. This is how silent dominance protects you without effort. You no longer need to defend your position. You no longer need to assert authority. You no longer need to manage perception. Your absence of reaction does the work for you. And once this locks in, it is very difficult to reverse. Because people don't consciously decide how to treat you, their nervous system does. They feel that pushing doesn't work, that provoking doesn't land, that urgency doesn't move you. So they adapt, quietly, permanently. From here forward, there are only two paths. Most men will return to needing reactions. They will seek alignment. They will explain silence. They will soften discomfort. They will feel liked, included, connected, and they will remain manageable. A smaller group chooses differently. They tolerate misunderstanding. They allow silence. They let others adjust. They do not need reactions. And because they do not need them, they become dangerous. Not because they threaten, because they cannot be moved. If you abandon this shift, you will go back to being busy, emotionally engaged, constantly responding, and quietly replaceable. If you keep it, you will feel grounded, still, unrushed, and quietly untouchable, not feared, not idolized, respected. This is the final truth. Power was never about what you said. It was never about how you acted. It was never about dominance displays. It was about access. The moment you stopped needing reactions, access closed. And when access closes, hierarchy stabilizes. Drop this final identity affirmation slowly, without emotion, without urgency. I do not need reactions, and that is why I am dangerous. Carry it without performing it, without proving it, without defending it. Let others feel the absence of access, and reorganize themselves accordingly. That is how power stops fluctuating. That is how dominance becomes silent, and once silence holds, nothing needs to be added. It simply remains.